All right, good evening, everyone. We're going to get started on tonight's presentation. My name is Phoebe Myers. I am the Community Program Senior Manager here at the Aspen Center for Environmental Studies, and we are so excited to welcome you to our first Naturalist Night of the season. Naturalist Nights is a wonderful partnership between Aspen Center for Environmental Studies, Wilderness Workshop, and the Roaring Fork Audubon. And this is an annual speaker series. This year will be 5 talks scattered throughout the winter, alternating every other week. And they will be at Wednesdays at the 3rd Street Center in Carbondale and Thursdays here at Helm Lake. I'm glad you found us here. We would like to thank our generous sponsors that make Naturalist Nights possible. Love to shout out our gold sponsors of Clark's Market, Ken Ransford and Reese Henry, as well as our silver sponsors here, Aspen Snowmass Ski Company, Village Smithy, Aspen Square, Cripple Creek Backcountry, Two Leaves in a Bud, Bristlecone Sports, Bonfire, Blazing Adventures, and the Ute Mountaineer. These organizations provide in-kind and financial contributions that make these Naturalist Nights possible. So big thanks for them. And Grassroots TV, yes. Grassroots TV is also recording and airing all of our talks this winter on their channels, as well as Wilderness Workshop and ACE's YouTube channels and Facebook pages, and a cleaned up recording will be on both of our organizations' websites for you to enjoy at a later date or share with your networks if this sparks your interest to share. But tonight I'm going to turn over the microphone to Chris Daniels of Roaring Fork Audubon to introduce tonight's speaker.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you for hosting tonight and for being the best and biggest sponsor of both the first and the second edition of Birds of Aspen in the Roaring Fork Valley. The book and tonight's presentation would not be happening without ACE's support, so thank you for that. I also want to convey Rebecca's regrets that she couldn't be here tonight. Those of you who came to see and hear Rebecca, who's a wonderful speaker, are welcome to a full refund on your way out. Our theme tonight is moments in the lives of birds. Phoebe, do I need this? Can I do without this? Right? No, let's leave it here for the moment. That's way better. Can everybody hear okay? Okay. So rather than get into a long kind of technical presentation, we just decided to sort of snapshot some moments in the bird's life cycle and illustrate those with some photographs that I think you'll enjoy. 99% of them were taken here in the Roaring Fork Valley, and I think you'll recognize the ones that weren't. So we're going to start off with these two little tree swallow fledglings. I want you to each other. That's what birds do. close. In fact, they're really older, more independent and stronger. Obviously, they separate, but this is a fairly typical posture for birds that have been to the nest. So we'll start off by talking a little bit about migration. This is a yellow-rumped warbler. It's one of our more abundant warblers and one of our more visible. And the reason that they're visible is because they get here very early in the year, usually around the 1st of May or even late April. Their arrival coincides with bud burst, which you see is going on there. So they're easy to see compared to later when they're deep in the vegetation and find. We get a lot of migrants through in the spring on their way to their nesting grounds. They're a really wonderful exotic bird. They look like they belong that you'll see in the southeast. Horned larks. Horned larks, tundra, but they're what we call altitudinal migrants. They don't go south, they go downhill. Up in the winter, you can see them on roadsides and in other Grand Junction all winter long. And hawk, they nest in the far Arctic. So when they go south for the winter, this is their south right here. And last year we had quite an eruption of hawks. We probably had of them between Basalt and Glenwood Springs. They're a beautiful hawk that typically will show up in singles or two or maybe three every winter here. Last year was extraordinary in the numbers that we had. Here's pouncing on a vole or some kind of rodent just outside Carbondale last winter. Nashville warbler. In the far northwest. Interesting thing about migration. In the spring, birds are very motivated. They want to get to their nesting grounds. They want to establish territory. They want to find a mate. They want to build a nest, et cetera, et cetera. So they move in a fairly narrow corridor, and they move as quickly as they can. Fall, they're not that motivated. They kind of drift south in comparison to their spring migration, and they spread out over a larger area. So Nashville warblers that you would see migrating basically up through California in the spring, in the fall, they'll spread out and they'll come. We saw fall. Rusty blackbird. Blackbirds are also fairly uncommon in the valley. This one and its mate hung out for a number of years. I haven't seen one but occasionally you'll see one mixed in with a flock of redwings in the winter. They rarely get this far south in the winter. Last year, apparently, there was an overpopulation of them, and there was a big flock that hung out at the ranch in Roaring Fork for a number of months, right around these catkins. That's the male on the right, a little more brightly colored, female on the left. Wilson's phalaropes are interesting in that the female, which you see here, is far more brightly marked than the male. And the female is the Peter Pan of the species. She lays eggs, and that's it. The male builds the nest, broods the eggs, raises the young. I make of that what you will. I won't comment any further. This one at an intermittent wetland in the Missouri Heights area. They typically come through here in the early spring. This was around the end of display, song, and territory. This is really the fun part of birding, because this is when they're out and singing and showing off and fighting with each other over territory. These broadtail hummingbirds, in fact, I think were fighting over a feeder. But if you know broadtail hummingbirds, you know it doesn't take much for them to fight. The waterfowl have a wide variety of display activities. These common goldeneyes are swinging their heads back and forth and grunting, trying to impress that female that's in between them. She seems less than impressed. But they're working hard. They'll have their new plumage, and they're starting to carry out these mating activities. They're already really hard to get her attention. Tail feathers, those are all characteristics of their mating garb. Later in the year, after the mating season is over, they will revert to an appearance that looks very much like the female. Here's an example of those birds that you don't find in the orange book. Sage grouse, dancing on their leg up in the credit area. See how bizarre they look and how hard they have to work puffing out those chest air sacs on their chests, fanning out the feathers, dancing around, waving their wings. If you ever have the opportunity to go see this in person, please go. It is an amazing. But that's their air sacs inflating and deflating. You hear that before you can see them. And as the light comes up, you see this display going on. It'll go on for 2.5, maybe 3 hours, and then they all go. Then they all just disappear. The display takes a long time, and it is very attention grabbing, not just for the females, but for predators. So you'll often waiting for somebody to show some signs of weakness, which is why they disperse as soon as the ceremony is done, because they're very vulnerable. But also very impressive in their own way. At the same time, and in nearly the same place, I'm sorry, sharp-tailed grouse on their lek. They also obviously wave their wings around, spread their tail feathers. Um, Occasionally, they step out of the air and flap their wings at each other. Standoffs, females. This Virginia rail, about 200 yards in the direction, in mid-March, doing some winter birding. And apparently this rail mistook my sorrel boot for a rival. And virtually came and attacked my boot. I had to step away so that I could get the camera to focus. It was pretty amazing, something that I've never seen before and don't expect to see again. But he was low already. Let me see. Oh, these are eared. This is on Spring Park Reservoir. The male is they don't eat this water lily material, but they build their nests out of it. So he's showing her, I've got experience in the construction trade, and I can build you a nice place. We'll get back to him in a little while. Of course, the other part of the mating process is song. This yellow warbler is one of our more common and abundant warblers. You see them in virtually every willow thicket in the valley. And he's singing his little heart out. This is a brewer sparrow. I'm going to see if I can play a brewer sparrow for you because it's a really weird little song. Nope, that's not it. That was a meadowlark. Nope, still a meadowlark. Can you hear that? It's kind of a fun little song. It's not one that you hear very often because they've only sing for about a week. They're very shy. They live in the sagebrush. They very seldom come out and show themselves. But if you're in the right place at the right time, you can catch one doing this song and you hear a mechanical kind of rattle. Not very melodic, but pretty cool. Meadowlark, you're all familiar with that. And as ground nesters, they are among the most at risk of our songbirds. Native grasslands, as you well know, are an endangered species. That's where these guys nest. And as soon as they're converted to a hayfield or a pasture, these guys have got nowhere to go. And that native grassland habitat is one of the big reasons. They're one of those songbirds, as opposed to like the brewer sparrow, that will sing almost all summer long. And they not only sing, but they puff out, at least in the spring, puff out those shoulder epaulets as a way of displaying their fitness. He's really putting a lot of effort into it there. He's breathing from the diaphragm. Yellow-headed blackbirds are not as numerous or as common as red-winged blackbirds because they require a solid habitat of cattails. Red-winged blackbirds are a lot less picky, but yellow-headed blackbirds are only found where you've got a good distance. And they have a very kind of mechanical, creaky sound, and they turn their heads like that when they sing. It looks really uncomfortable, but works for them. Northern flicker. Flickers not only call, and the flicker is one of the noisier of the woodpeckers, but they also drum. You hear the drumming of a woodpecker is always that they're after their display. And of course, they don't need wood to drum. They'll drum on metal roofs or anything that'll reverberate, make a good noise for them. All right, the next phase, after finding mates and territories, is nesting and rearing. These basketball-sized nests out of moss and lichen and streamside plants. They're waterproof. They're stuck to streamside rocks. They're never more than a few feet away from water. Communally, and they'll pick up little dabs of mud in their beak and build these chambers all adjacent to each other, and they often help each other with nest building and child rearing. These guys are very adaptable. Bridge in Glenwood Springs, and in fact, under bridges is one of the best places in the valley. Typically don't come up this high in the valley, but anywhere from Carbondale down all the way down valley, you can find it under every bridge. This is the nest of a pipit. Pipit's nest in the tundra. Nesters. There was still snow on the ground when this picture was taken, and they will count on the local grasses and plants to grow as they incubate their eggs. So by the time they hatch, those nests are very well hidden behind a curtain of vegetation. Ospreys and bald eagles do this too, will bring more nesting material to their platform nests. It's part of the mating ritual, but it also has the benefit of covering up the it can get kind of funky. But if they bring in a new pile of sticks, then they create a clean surface for their eggs and their young. These nests will get to be 7 feet across. Some of the larger ones are 12 to 14 feet deep. They typically will get to a size that will knock over whatever they're mountain area down mid-valley. This is a blue-gray gnatcatcher. I found this guy on Red Hill near Carbondale because she was darting in and out of the same pinyon tree over and over again. So I figured she must have a nest in there. This is made up of woven bark off of pinyon and juniper trees. The eggs are about the size of a Tic Tac, and they're well hidden. same method, bird flying in and out of this nest. And there were people in the campsite, and they had no idea. So we were able to show them the nest, and they were very gracious, and we were obviously. Birds are sort of the condominium builders of the bird world. They drill a new hole and drill a new nest every year. And if you were to come back to this tree in a few years, and lot of green swallows in another hole, and tree swallows in another hole. It's an apartment building in some of these old growth aspens. Again, you can see that she's on the nest. It's a floating nest, and apparently the did a good job. This young eagle is about 6 weeks old. It's about 2 weeks from actually leaving the nest. The parent bird has just come back from a trip to the river, and it's got its wings spread out to dry them. This is on near Seven Castles. It's highly visible, been there for quite a while. Activity. You need to be careful because it's a narrow road and so forth, but they'll be in there a month or two, probably 2 months, laying eggs and getting ready to build another bird. There are 4 swallows in this nest. This is actually a nest box in the North Star area. There are 4 babies in there. You can see they're maybe a week younger than the birds we saw in that very first slide. And you can see how they're totally on top of each other. And they have been living that way since they were. Now, these guys were actually being fed by a left-winged swallow. There are lots of theories as to why one species would the left-winged swallow lost her brood, but she's still instinctively taking care of chicks. Another theory is that because swallows all kind of have it's tribal almost, but you do see this among in particular where cross-species feeding going on. Here's another example. They're early out of the nest, a few days. Young birds, particularly as they get to the point where they're ready to leave the nest, get pretty aggressive about getting from their parent. There are precocial birds, cells right out of the egg, like the sandpiper. And there are altricial birds that need to be fed by their parents in the nest. Most wading birds and water birds, ducks, sandpipers, etc., are precocial, like the spotted sandpiper. They